This is your community, and as was stated in the video, not only is this your community, we are your community foundation. And reiterating what was mentioned, that we are in the business of connecting the interest of our donors with their passion, with the issues that they are concerned about, that they care for, and not just our donors, but the stakeholders in each of the 29 communities that we serve. And there's no better way to understand the issues, the priorities, the concerns, the aspirations of those stakeholders than, in our opinion, coming out and having a conversation. And that's why we are engaged in what is a 29-town listening tour, where we come out and have a frank, candid, honest discussion about all of those things that are of interest and importance to our stakeholders. We do a lot of research, we have a lot of data, but we would be disingenuous for us to presume that because we've been around almost 93 years and making investments, that we have our fingers on the pulse of every one of those communities in a way that is relevant and impactful. That is why we committed ourselves to making sure that we reimagine, re-engage, and hopefully re-inspire the relationship that we have with each of those 29 communities in the greater Hartford region. We are a community foundation, and as a community foundation, there are regional issues that we want to make sure that we are lending our voice and our resources to, that we use our convening power, but also within that region, we want to make sure that each of those 29 communities feels an intimate and personal and direct relationship and connection with the foundation. So that's why we're here, and we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and have a conversation, and a conversation, more so a conversation that you have with us and that we do more listening than talking. So a couple of things, just to housekeeping. There are comment cards that were on each of your chairs. So as we have this discussion and engage in a dialogue, by all means, we want the questions, we want the discussion, we want the dialogue here, but if there's something that you don't feel inclined to ask as a part of this discussion or talk about, by all means, if you would please put it on that comment card. If after the evening is over, you thought of something that didn't come up, please put it on that comment card and provide it to us. If, again, the discussion, whatever it is, there are no discussions points that are off limits here, because you have allowed us to come here to this beautiful facility. You've taken time out of your day. We want to make sure that this is an opportunity for us to really hear and aspire to be a more impactful and relevant partner, to be a resource that you all find that is hopefully helps to make the greater Hartford region the envy of other communities across the country because of the relationships that we establish. So in doing this, we look to have each of these meetings be full of diverse stakeholders. We have some of our nonprofit partners here. We have some of our elected officials here. We have citizens who are concerned about the quality of life in their community here. And that's exactly who we want to make sure that we're connecting with in a very, unstructured, well, somewhat structured, but an informal way that just isn't rigid. How many of you, in terms of hearing about this session, how many of you were made aware, either maybe through social media? We're just trying to get okay. How many of you through either traditional media, print, radio, or television ads? Okay. Word of mouth, yeah. Okay. Other ways, emails, or just good. Okay, well, good. We're glad you're here, and we asked that question because it's important for us to make sure that we're using multiple channels to reach out to the stakeholders, because we again want a diverse group of perspectives and a dialogue that is robust. So in that regard, this is really about hearing how we again can be a more important partner, a more impactful partner, a more relevant partner. How we can be more creative, and our board has charged us with being more nimble, leaning in, being proactive, taking informed risk about making a difference in the community. I'm also grateful that we have a number of our staff members here, our senior vice presidents here, who represent the greatest asset that we have, which is the staff members who bring their talent, their passion to connecting the fiscal resources that we are blessed to have, which is our most important tool, to the issues that are relevant. We've been around for almost 93 years, and as was mentioned, we are one of the oldest and largest community foundations in the country, but don't want to assume because we've been around almost 93 years and have established a pattern of stewardship and have established a long-standing relationship that if you do, you've been doing it that way for almost 93 years, so things must be okay. Nothing could be further from the truth in terms of any assumptions that we want to make. So that being the case, I'll open it up with a few questions, but this doesn't work if I'm the only one talking. This is supposed to be a dialogue, and more importantly, it's supposed to be a listening tour. So I'm here, we're recording this, so we make sure that we are understanding and are able to come back to you with what we think we've heard to have you validate that. We have Gio here taking pictures, so we want to really capture these moments. This is being recorded also on audio and video. So there's a microphone. If you have a question, there's a microphone that will go around. Yes, it is for your 15 minutes of fame, but it's also so we can hear and pick up your audio on the recording. So if you would just be patient and make sure that we get you on the microphone so those questions can be recorded. Because at the end of this session, again, we're going to collect and synthesize what we've heard. It is going to be presented back to make sure we understood it. These discussions are a critical part of helping us to inform and shape our next strategic plan. This year, we are in the final year of our current 3-year strategic plan, and we are gearing up right now to formulate our next strategic plan, and that has to be shaped by and informed by the discussions and the input from our stakeholders, a wide array of stakeholders. Again, donors and nonprofit partners and citizens and elected officials and individuals who are connected and engaged in their community. So let's open it up, and again, I'll put a few questions out, and if I don't see a response and you make eye contact, that'll be good enough for me to solicit input from you, and if not, I'll just walk around the room and start randomly putting a microphone there. This is a special place. Again, my wife and I have been here my wife, our son, and mother have been here for 8 months in the greater Hartford region, and one of the things we do enjoy is driving through the region, just understanding and appreciating the unique characteristics of the 29 communities within, there are broader communities than that, but the 29 specifically that are in our catchment area. Having driven out here a couple of times before, and then even today, the quality of life clearly is something that is appealing. So, talk to us, please, about what, makes this Canton a town that is appealing in terms of the quality of life. What are some of the concerns or frustrations that you have? What are some of the aspirations? And how can we, as an organization with resources that we've been afforded through the generosity of donors from across the region here in Canton and beyond, be more relevant, be more impactful, be a valuable resource to you? So I open it up with any number of those questions to start our dialogue. This is not a shy group. I saw the chatting and the mingling going on. Can I start with the first select woman? Elected officials, at some point it's right.
Just make it up. Thanks, Marge. I think we'll start with you, Marge. So I'm Leslie Hill. Is this on?
It's on.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Leslie Hill. Some of you probably know me. I would have to say one of the two great assets that we have in Canton, the first and foremost one is our people. And so investments that are being made that improve the lives of our residents, to me, are critically important. And I'm looking at the list here of the different investments that you have made in the community. And I want to thank you for all of those because seeing these numbers is very impactful. And then another real treasure that we have here, and this is the perfect setting to see it, are the natural resources that we have in Canton and the work that we try to do to be respectful of them, at the same time needing to move our community forward and maintain infrastructure and do things that we need to do. So we do run into challenges there. I don't know that I have boy, I could come up with a laundry list for you if you gave me half an hour and a piece of paper, but I can't think of anything right now, but I'm really excited to hear what the other residents here have in mind and what some of their needs are that I might not be aware
Absolutely.
of. So.
Well, thank you. And again, starting, like I said, with the place that we are in, which obviously is a center to highlight and to educate and inspire about the natural beauty and the natural resources here. And I said, my wife and I was, I thought about running home and picking her up and have her come out with me, and it just didn't work out logistically. And then after that, I said, boy, we could have brought Ethan out. I wasn't sure of the balance of having us be distracted by a 7-year-old running around looking at the turtles and the snakes, and figured it would be better to bring him out, on a spring break or on a weekend. But that natural beauty, the natural resources, an asset to this community. And again, as you give thought to ways that we can help ensure that continues to be a part of what makes this community special, to the point you made earlier, give some thought, and even if you don't do it now, that's what the comment cards are for. Do give some thought to what are the areas that are of concern or are of challenge to the community that we perhaps might be able to assist with through financial resources, technical assistance, some of the knowledge and data that we are aggregating. So thank you for that start. Yes, sir.
Hello. My name is David Beck. I've been a resident here for a real long time, and I got the notification for this a little bit late, so bear with me if it's a little bit off topic. But one thing that's a big concern to me here in Canton, we started to touch base on it, and it's nicely displayed right here, is the Farmington River and Nepog State Forest. Mm-hmm. So every year I go in there with my daughters and dog and bring a snorkel and fish garbage out of the river, or go up through the woods and go four-wheeling, which, as I think things occur, we, instead of figuring out a system to embrace it, to allow it, we just shut it off. Right. So my concern is that river, as I've seen people who are, pick your choice of words you want to call them, will destroy and disrupt and wreck things, and then we block it off, and then folks such as myself can't use it. And that's where I get a little bit concerned. It's a phenomenal resource I've grown up on, and I worry about losing it.
Right. No, very much on topic, and figuring out how to balance, as the first elected woman talked about, how to balance, the benefits that come with development economically and providing additional opportunities, but at the same time maintaining that natural resource that is in many instances, an envy of so many other communities, is something that cannot be recreated, something that no amount of money in the world is going to be able to, just put a river, a natural water course like you have. So to the extent that there is a consensus among the community to think about those problems, and we can help be a convening entity to the extent that there is a data or information of what has worked in other similarly situated communities, and we can bring that to the extent that there might be specific projects around that. So conversations like that obviously involve a wide array of stakeholders, the State Department of Natural Resources, the local elected officials, the local stakeholders. So to the extent that, helping to convene or facilitate those conversations and bring, thought leadership or resources that would help. We don't have, there are no easy answers, and that's clearly what you're saying, that, you see the problems and the challenges, but there are no easy answers, because no matter what you come up with, there are going to be other folks on the other side of that issue who say, yeah, but, it's a great natural resource and it's plenty to go around, but development is important, or vice versa. So that's what we're here. We want to hear these things that you sort of wrestle with as a community and figure out how we can be a part of facilitating a discussion that hopefully ends up in something productive, from, again, data to actual physical, financial investments. Thank you. Yes?
I don't really need this.
Oh, no, we on to record.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. Hi, I'm Jay Kaplan. I'm the director of Roaring Brook Nature Center, and we're glad we were able to host this. If I can serve as a Canton cheerleader for just a couple of minutes, I think what makes this community unique and special is the great diversity of life here. You've got Collinsville, one of the 10 coolest towns in the United States, for those of you who remember that from a few years ago. And at the same time, we have some officers from the Canton Land Conservation Trust here. Canton Land Trust owns over 2,000 acres of land that is protected for citizens to enjoy. A number of years ago, they did a poll when we were doing our last POCD, and one of the things that many members of this community hit upon as being special was the quality of life that we have here in Canton. And I think going forward, that's a concern. Canton is not Simsbury. Canton is not Avon. It's sort of in a special place. And in order to maintain what makes this town special, it requires a great deal of planning. And from my perspective, having some familiarity with what the foundation does, I know that they've been at the forefront of assisting communities with their planning, so that obviously the town will grow. There will be more commercial development, and I don't know how much more residential development there'll be, because everything in Canton is either going up or down or standing in water, as a former selectman once said. But there has to be the proper amount of planning in order to maintain what makes this town special and what people like about it. So,
Thank you. To the notion of our ability to invest in things like helping towns figure out their path forward, specifically around development. That's an interesting point, because we've heard that in 2 or 3 of our other sessions, is that people embrace the quality of life, but do have concerns about how to prepare for plan or management development. For those that are experiencing residential growth, how to do that in a way that still maintains a quality of life, with the concern of access to services and the pressures that the infrastructure needs that come along with that development. And for those that are looking to inspire a little more economic development or economic growth, how can they do that without losing the focus on the residential quality of life that exists? So again, hearing from you, what are some of the concerns that you may be faced with today, while also looking over the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years in terms of making those decisions that would help shape the planning are exactly some of those priorities. So thank you for sharing that. Yes.
We've lived here about 18 years, and we were very Hartford-centric before we got married. Mm-hmm. We actually came out here, and there's a big mountain called Avon Mountain between Hartford and Canton. In the rest of the country, it's called a mound. But for us, it's called a mountain, and it gets shut down in the wintertime, and everybody buys bread the day before and all that kind of stuff. But one thing I wanted to mention, actually 2 things. First of all, recently attended that wonderful workshop you folks did about fundraising a couple days ago. And I actually posted on Facebook the question, what would we do without the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving? And the responses were, we would not be the 29-town community that we are because of the Hartford Foundation. And I just want to make sure that the people in this room, and it's going to sound like I'm getting money from you guys, but I'm not. But without you folks, the environment, the education, the arts, the culture, the history would be just nowhere near what it is today because of the work that you folks do. I wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Second, there does seem to be a little bit of a mountain between Hartford and Canton. My wife and I tend to turn right onto Route 44 and head into Hartford every day. Mm-hmm. And many times we turn left and go into Collinsville and use the resources there. But, Mark Twain described Hartford as the most beautiful city in the world. That was a long time ago. It was also the wealthiest city in the United States in the 1870s, 1880s. How can the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving help us in Canton connect more with the resources that are available in our capital city? We hear a lot of negative news about, bankruptcy and things like that, but it is still an amazing source of inspiration and education and young people and free voices. How can we in Canton, through the Hartford Foundation, connect more with our capital city?
Well, again, thank you for raising it. First of all, again, thank you for the sentiments around the work that this foundation has done for the last 92 plus years. And as I said at the beginning, that is only possible through the generosity of thousands of individuals and families and corporations that over those 92 plus years have entrusted us with their resources, and our obligation to maintain the utmost stewardship and to make sure that those resources exist in perpetuity is something that we take very, very seriously. So only because we've been afforded that tool can we do that work. And then only through, again, our partnerships with our nonprofit organizations, with the talented staff that we have. So we certainly appreciate you sharing that. But those words really reflect back on the entirety of this community. We are one of several organizations. We are unique in the sense of being a community foundation and the largest in the state, but our work is impossible to be accomplished without all of those partners that we talked about. And I also appreciate you asking that question because being new to I say that my family and I are new to the Hartford region, but not new to the Hartford experience, the greater Hartford experience. And it has been interesting talking to people about the mountains, the Talcott Mountain and Avon Mountain, and you're like, wow, oh yeah, the hill that you drive over on the other side. That's looking at ourselves as a regional foundation serving 29 communities. We heard a similar question, which was very encouraging in our last one in Granby and East Granby, that there was a very strong pride about the community, but also a question of how do we ensure that we do remain connected, because what goes on in Hartford is relevant to what happens here in Canton, and the quality of life and the challenges that sometimes it's easy to say, oh, that's a Hartford problem, that's a problem that the city has to wrestle with, and good luck, and we hope they figure that out. That in a region, the region on balance will never be stronger than, the community that is struggling the most. And that's not to say, again, that, and I can say this as a mayor, former mayor of a city very much like Hartford, that, sometimes we have our own self-inflicted, wounds and decisions and issues that impact cities. Some of them are self-inflicted, but some of them are unique because where the cities are positioned in terms of transportation and access, cities serve a critical need in providing for sometimes the most vulnerable residents that take that and sort of those problems become out of sight. So understanding that cities are uniquely positioned within their regions and provide, as you said, a service to citizens, a valuable quality of life that is unable to be replicated in terms of some of the cultural institutions, the amenities that we as members of the Hartford region can all enjoy. And then sometimes enjoy them and then go back to our communities and forgetting that there's the other side of those challenges. So that's part of this discussion that we're having with those 29 communities, saying while we are very much laser focused on issues and priorities in the town of Canton, we are at the same time saying that we believe that there is an obligation we have as a regional foundation to facilitate those conversations, to help make those connections, either through convenings that we do, through investments that we make, through bringing thought leadership or experiences of other communities and how they have begun to really address their regional challenges and opportunities. I learned early on, one of the things that, make sure that I kept the fact that there are 169 towns in the state of Connecticut, each of them, unique and special, and 29 here. But notion of using terms like regionalism, and I had that same experience in Youngstown, the central city and, the perception that the central city wanted to parse its problems out into the region and somehow not take its own responsibility. And nothing could have been further from the truth. The other side of that coin being that those challenges that are sometimes seemingly unique to a community, the resolutions and the approaches aren't going to come simply from the city of Hartford. They are going to come from the entirety of the region. So again, don't have an easy answer to that other than the fact that we absolutely think it's critical that we are, we lend our voice and sometimes it's at the legislative level. We recently, are in a process of taking a position on the report that was issued by the Connecticut Commission on Fiscal Stability and Economic Growth. It was convened. It was to address not just Hartford issues. It was convened to address Connecticut issues. And there were a set of recommendations. And our position wasn't, the recommendations are all good or all bad. It was the fact that the current state of affairs in the state of Connecticut is untenable in terms of the trajectory that we're going. Here's a set of recommendations that basically lay out some shared pain across the state. Because there isn't a situation where, a group can say, well, it's all good, but we don't want to have to make any changes or sacrifices or feel any of the discomfort of putting the state on a better trajectory. what we have said is that, whether you like this set of recommendations or not, there is something that has to be done that realistically is going to probably cause some discomfort, that is going to cause, some shared sacrifice that in the long run helps to put the state on a better trajectory. And that we're also saying that we have resources that we're willing to put on the table to help mitigate, address, some of those issues as they come up. But this only works if we sort of all buy into it. If one community says, oh, that's all well and good, but we're just going to kind of, stay out here in our bucolic sort of ideal situation and let the rest of the community figure that out. So that's one of the things, is being willing to weigh in on that and knowing that, we may have some critics to say, hey, the Hartford Foundation, just quietly take the donations, give to the arts, give to the things that make people feel good and don't do anything else. We think that is, again, not a position that ultimately the majority of our donors and stakeholders would want us to take. We feel that there is an obligation to help talk about those tough issues. One of the things that we convened was, you mentioned the discussion around Hartford's fiscal condition and the contemplation of whether Hartford was going to file for bankruptcy. We worked with the city to convene a panel discussion, brought in some other experts who had been involved in municipal bankruptcies to have a informed conversation. We weren't advocating whether Hartford should or shouldn't. We were saying that this is a very real possibility. So if that's the case, let's bring in a discussion about what the ups and downs, the pros and cons that those communities experience, knowing that Hartford's story might be different, instead of just saying, well, if Hartford files, that's the end of it, or they should or they shouldn't file. It wasn't something that we had done previously, but it's a part of that notion of, Hartford, if it were to file bankruptcy, that is an impact on the region. It might not be as direct as it would be if you maybe were a stakeholder directly in Hartford, but the well-being. So those are ways that we see ourselves and want to continue to be relevant in terms of those discussions, and very much appreciate what we've been hearing. You and your wife, I'm sure represent others asking that, you turn right and go, down 44 into Hartford and enjoy those things, and can go the other way. That happens every day. Thousands of people cross those lines on a map that we so often identify ourselves by, those zip codes or those subdivisions in those towns, which there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we realize that when it comes to some of those challenges and opportunities, those boundaries mean nothing. Those boundaries in terms of investment opportunities or challenges. Another thing is we recently hosted a forum on the opiate crisis. The opiate crisis, that's not a Hartford, North End Hartford problem. That is as impactful and devastating to Canton and to Simsbury and to Glastonbury as it is, anywhere else. So things like that, and we want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves as that resource, as that broker of those type of discussions and solutions whenever possible.
Right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll bring the mic. There's one over here, and we'll bring the mic to Susan.
Thank you.
Oh, for the video, just so we can make sure we get your voice on the video.
Oh, that's okay. Okay.
Yep, here we go.
Everyone, your turn.
I hold this? I just would like you to talk about all the towns that you are involved in. And I just would like to close the circle or enlarge the circle here to point out that this area, and particularly the Roaring Brook Nature Center, has immense opportunities for education for people from all of the towns to come to learn about air and water and birds and flowers and trees. And so just a general education about respect for the land, which really can be totally accessible to anybody in any of the towns, whether it be taking a course here, bringing your children, coming for a bird walk, just coming to walk the trails. I mean, it's amazing what there is here to offer. And now this wonderful new place that, is just, it's amazing what there is to offer all of the towns, and especially inner city.
That's a great point. And so how do we collectively make sure that this is not the best kept secret? I mean, that would be a tragedy for this to be the best kept secret. And, for us also to just assume that people know or have the ability to get here. And we still hear the stories to this day of young people and students and children, since we're in this region, who have really never had the opportunity to venture outside of either their several block neighborhood. Some of them have never ventured outside of of the city proper of Hartford, or not far outside, and have no idea that 25 minutes away is an entire new world that is still within their broader community, that can give them exposure and education and inspiration to why it's important to be a good steward of natural resources. That they can come and as we were talking about earlier, tube or kayak down the Farmington River, or fish in one of the most fished rivers in the country. So the other part of that is, how do we make sure that the educators and the guidance counselors and others who shepherd those students are aware that this is a resource that they are welcome? Because sometimes there's a perception that's like, is it a welcoming resource? Is it a place that we have access to? So making sure that, as you all have conveyed that we help make sure that message is spread. And sometimes it becomes a practical, it would be great, but how do we get a group of students from point A to point B? That's a challenge that we would love to help facilitate, or love to help resolve. So things like that, just that message, that attitude that this is a great resource that is welcoming to the broader community, and we don't want there to be a logistical or transportation issue of getting kids out here to be inspired, because who knows, those kids then can be inspired to a life of science, or natural resource preservation, or just saying, boy, it's great that I love living in the city of Hartford, but it's great to know that in less than a half hour I can come out and enjoy these amenities and have that be a part of my life experience also. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for coming today. I have so many comments. I think I need more than 3 minutes, but as I grow older, the one thing I definitely realize is that we're all connected. I make that commute to Hartford every day. I've been doing it for 25 years. And the connections that people make with one another in different communities, just because I live in Canton doesn't mean that someone in Avon isn't part of my community that I frequent almost every day, and Collinsville and everywhere else. But, I'm very, I just want to say the one thing I love about Canton is definitely what everybody's already said, is that balance between the economic development and the respect for our natural resources and that preservation. I don't think I've ever been anywhere where it's been like so many different groups that are committed to that, and it's one of the things that drew me here. We moved here before I was married, before I became a mom. And I just knew that this was a place where I wanted to have a family and stay.
Good. Where'd you move from, can I ask?
Actually, I grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yep. So I went to UConn, and I have a theme today because I met someone from the UConn Foundation today, and now we're meeting you, and there's something going on, some sort of karmic thing going on today for us. But, I'll just say that one of the things that's concerning for every town in Connecticut, and just like you mentioned, are the budgets. The money, the budgets from the state, the funding for the schools, the funding for this, the funding for that. Being a mom of 2 kids, I'm sure, my kids' school education takes priority. And that's definitely one of our concerns,
Thank you.
So our budgets are tight. Our personnel, our superintendent makes, I'm sure it's painstaking to make those decisions. Just to elaborate on bringing the kids out here, we support an open choice program. We have the kids coming from other towns, from Hartford, and it's a welcoming community. Good. We have host families, that they can sign up. So if there's after-school programs, the kids can stay. It's hardship on the parents to be able to come, so they can do something after school.
Right.
But, this year our school budget is there, and it was proposed, and now another $90,000 is asked to be cut from it, and the kids are the ones that, in the end,
Right.
lose out.
Thank you. We have educational investments as a significant part of our priority area. And again, a part of that discussion is how our resources will never be sufficient to replace, obviously, the public funding that goes into education, which between the state and the local communities are obligations that they fulfill. But we also recognize is that we want to be able to work with communities to talk about those issues that are of importance, that are of a priority, that through collaboration there are ways to support. We do that with some of the academically and financially challenged districts within the state of Connecticut, within our region, and welcome again opportunities to figure out how to bring support to those areas, and even the regular meetings that we have with elected officials. Not that they ask, but we've made it very clear that there is an obligation that elected officials have, and the first select woman knows this, to make those tough decisions, budgetary obligations that have to be fulfilled. And philanthropy in general, and certainly not us as a single foundation, can step in to completely take over that, nor is it something we should be doing. That being said, though, figuring out partnerships and creative ways to bring resources so that those opportunities remain open to our students and children is something that we have done, continue to do, and would welcome that conversation here. Cheryl had a conversation. Come on. Yeah. No, I'm good. Yeah, give me credit. It's like, how does he know my name?
I'm Cheryl Cleaves, and I'm from Spirit Horse Therapeutic Riding Center in Canton. And what you were just talking about in Hartford, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about what we do. I've lived in Canton for 21 years, and I've raised my family here. And when my youngest son was diagnosed with autism, I really had nowhere to bring him. There was another therapeutic riding center. I was on a wait list. I couldn't afford to take him. And I always said, if I could do this, I will. So fast forward 20 years, I started it in 2012. We're all volunteers. I have my people from the board of directors, our instructors, and what we did is we work with people with disabilities, adults all the way down to kids 2 years of age, early intervention programs, and then we started to grow, and anytime we saw an opportunity for a program, we decided to do it. So Bulkley High School in Hartford, their City Slickers program got shut down. So we worked with the social worker, and now every year we have a bus of kids. We have, I think, almost 25 to 30 kids come twice a week to Spirit Horse. They earn a stipend to work on the farm. A lot of them have special needs or they're refugees, and they work on the farm. And then we realized after the first year that a lot of them didn't know that vegetables grew on plants.
Right.
They didn't know any of that. They couldn't believe when they saw a garden at the end of the season in September, so we decided to make a community garden for them. Wow. So last year, they planted their own garden. We learn every single year we learn something. One is when they plant a garden in the spring, they have the summer off, which leaves all the weeding to all of the volunteers. So, but that's just another example how you said, like, to bring the kids from Hartford over. The other problem we had too were kids in the juvenile review boards. Mm-hmm. They have nowhere to go where they can really make a connection. They can make a connection. Ours are all private lessons. So they will be with an instructor and the horse, or we have goats. We even bought the kids chickens so they can understand that instead of eating a chicken, you can have an egg every day. Mm-hmm. So we've been working on that, but the problem for us is we do not have the funding. Yeah. We're all volunteers and we find very small grants. So we definitely want to see what we can do to partner to get some of these programs funded so that we can really grow. And next month we are actually making the investment of putting in an indoor riding arena so we can work all year.
So have you had a previous relationship with the foundation?
At the very beginning when I called, because they would talk to me over the phone, okay. It was when another therapeutic riding center wasn't working anymore. Okay. But because I was brand new right. and their funding, I was hoping their funding could come to us. Okay. And then same thing with the City Slickers program, okay. There was funding for them, okay. but it never got transferred over to us either. Oh, so I'm not quite sure the avenue to take, okay. but we definitely would like to talk more about that.
Well, we would welcome that, and Judy Rossi Battle, who is our Senior Vice President of Community Investment, she and her team really work diligently with nonprofits in a variety of ways. We have a nonprofit support program which works with nonprofits that are looking to build capacity and understand fundraising, and we have funds that are available through that mechanism. And then we have our more traditional grant program. So
Yeah, this is all new for us, especially being volunteers.
Right.
And we see a lot of the different programs you put on, and we're hoping that maybe we can start sending some of our people there, because we all have full-time jobs in addition to our full-time of running this program.
So we will make sure that you are connected, and we would look forward and welcome to have your team members, volunteers, board members to attend and participate in those sessions and then talk about how we can explore opportunities to build relationships.
That'd be great.
Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming out. Absolutely. And thank you for the work and just describing that notion of connecting, we're using Hartford example, but it could be East Hartford, Manchester, students who just don't have that as a part of their experience. And again, that we, might chuckle or think, but the kids who are used to walking in a grocery store and seeing the produce and the vegetables there, or that's in an ideal, or worse, thinking that the vegetables just come in a can and that sort of. But no, the process that goes on to grow and care for and be able to harvest those. There's that side of it. Then there's the business side of, okay, so you do that, but how then do you get it to market? There are farmers and all the things. So the natural part of that cycle, the business part of that cycle. And that it doesn't happen in some faraway place. It happens here in your own community. Thank you very much. Look forward to helping you make those connections.
Hello? Oh, it's on. Hi, I'm Susan Purbeson. I'm the Executive Director with Gifts of Love. And although we're not listed on they're one of the organizations you help in Canton, we actually are.
Oh, cool.
We're headquartered in Avon, so I'm sure that's why we're not on your list, but we've been serving Canton for 29 years. So I just want to thank you for your support. I came on board a little over a year ago, and I think I've utilized everything that you've had to offer. Doug Shipman knows I sign up for everything possible. But I also, as I'm listening to people talk, wanted to share that we do have an interdistrict program, and because we merged with a farm out in Simsbury, and we have first through fourth graders that are paired with schools in Hartford. And we go into Hartford and they come out to the farm and they learn about everything that everyone here is talking about, how a vegetable is grown. They plant them, they harvest them. We have 5 ecosystems there. We have animals. But I was thinking, we are more than open to collaborating like with the Roaring Center so that they expand their learning, or collaborating with the woman that runs the autism programs. We have the relationships with the schools, and we're more than willing to look at collaborating and expanding it in any way. And you guys provide a large part of that funding for that program, but we have to get matching dollars for everything. But it's been very successful, and it's just the joy on their faces. And when they come together, it's so nice because they come together on the farm. If we brought Simsbury or Granby or Avon or Canton kids into Hartford to teach them about farming, they'd be intimidated.
Right.
Same thing as if we brought the Hartford kids into the classrooms here, they'd be intimidated. But on the farm, they're there to have fun.
Right.
And learning happens in a natural environment. They're paired with a buddy from the other school, and you'd be amazed at how many of them continue the friendship afterwards.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you for that, and just let other people know that we're open to collaborating and expanding the program in any way.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And you hit on, one of the issues that we very much embrace, encourage, and incentivize through resources is that collaboration. Oftentimes, and it's not every, but oftentimes, the landscape is seen as a competitive landscape, and the work that you're doing isn't competitive. To the extent that here are young people and students who clearly have needs that you're both looking to address in ways that are similar, parallel, ways that are complementary. We very much encourage and are always happy to figure out ways to help facilitate collaboration. And collaboration doesn't mean that it doesn't always mean collaborate. That means we can put less money in. There might be collaboration that requires more of an investment from us, but that's an investment that is very much aligned with the return that we're looking for, is helping to build those relationships and facilitate sustainable ways, because this notion of, oh, it's great program, but we by ourselves can't sustain it, versus through some sort of collaborative relationship that we're not going to dictate. We'll facilitate, we'll bring ideas, but ultimately a collaboration can be formed between some of our nonprofit partners. I mean, that's like gold for us. So our willingness to invest and support and sustain that is better for the entirety of the region. So there are times when we don't want forced collaboration. We're aware of that too. It's like we say collaboration provide more resources, so we see marriages of convenience, or just two things, a round peg in a square hole, and they call that collaboration. We don't mean that. We mean collaboration that is really fruitful for both parties, or the multiple parties that are involved. So thank you for sharing that.
I'm Marge Harmon. I'm here for the museum and also Canton Garden Club. We at this town is amazing. The people are constantly giving money. We're draining the businesses because we have so many fundraisers. But one thing the Garden Club is doing is the beautification of the town. And there's a couple of areas like the green and, well, the bridge, the flower bridge is under Main Street. Mm-hmm. We're trying to, and at the Peace Pole, and what we're trying to do is put some sprinklers in so that we can beautify these areas and not worry about the water and this and that. We also do the Cherry Brook School. We have gardens there that they work with the school. I'm trying to think what else we do. We try to make money.
Okay.
I'm looking at you to see what we do. You should, yeah. But most of the thing was beautification of the town.
Good.
And the parks. And we're just trying to really make it nice. And we have 4 villages in town.
Right.
And some of the villages, they don't have a lot of flowers or what. And
And again,
I know we're not need-based, but like I say, everybody's draining these businesses.
Right. So we want to, talk about ways that we can help inspire philanthropy. Clearly, there's already a commitment in this town toward that. As you talk about the businesses who are, serving their customers, making their profits as they should, supporting their families and their employees, but at the same time, giving of and sharing of that, the benefit and the bounty that they receive. One of the things that we have been talking about that we're excited about is, as a part of these listening tours, is to talk about issues, build relationships, explore opportunities to provide funding or support or convening to the stakeholders that have attended, but also wanting to leave a legacy, to have a leave behind that is a real result of these conversations. And one of the issues that has come up that we just think is an idea, a wonderful idea, is helping to establish a fund for each of our towns. To then have a fund that is governed by a diverse group of stakeholders in the town, that we perhaps seed, that helps to inspire philanthropy, that could work in a couple of ways. A fund that a part of it is established as an endowment that would exist in perpetuity, continue to be there for generations, and a part of it which could be used for immediate priorities, things that the town, whatever the committee that would help govern this would decide these are things we want to do. It would also then provide an opportunity to say, look, we've got skin in the game. Not that you don't, but we've got a fund in the town that is perhaps an inspiration or encouragement to those businesses to create matching campaigns to help build that fund. So it's been something that we've been excited about that's emerged through the conversations that we've had, and would welcome an opportunity to talk about what a community fund for the town of Canton might look like, that would allow the town to address some of those priorities through that fund. We will always be here as a long-term partner. We will continue to build and expand the relationships that we have with the communities and with the nonprofit partners. But the idea of helping a town to establish a fund and being able to seed that to facilitate and inspire philanthropy at the local level, they can go in all sorts of ways. Some communities have talked about using it for their trails, or we were in one community talking about the young people and the desire to have a skate park. those are decisions that, happen amongst the residents and should. And if we can perhaps help to establish a fund that allows the investment and creation of some of those things, we would welcome that. So thank you. Yes, sir. Get the microphone right behind you.
Hi, my name is Fred Schott. I live in Collinsville. I've lived here for 15 years with a 1-year hiatus. One of the things that caught my eye on your handout was the people chart. What will Canton be like in 2040? Mm-hmm. And the thing that jumps off the page at me is the incredible increase in the 55 years and older population, to the point where in the early 2020s, that's going to be the largest demographic group in town, all other things being equal. Mm-hmm. So I guess based on that, the question is, what kinds of activities, programs, initiatives has the Hartford Foundation been focusing on, or what does it intend to focus on in coming years that kind of deal with that demographic reality?
Sure. And that goes to what I said at the beginning, is that we are in the third and final year of our current strategic plan. And that strategic plan has 3 priority areas: education from birth through college, family and economic security, and vibrant communities. And vibrant communities is a broad category that can cover and does cover any number of things, from the arts and the culture and basic human needs and domestic violence and mental and physical health priorities. So as you pointed out, the growing demographic of those between 50 and 55 in this community, and that's not dissimilar to what's going on in other communities. That's part of why we're here, is to have the conversation, to solicit those ideas and those thoughts around that issue. So as a part of our next strategic plan, we make sure that those things, and while the strategic plan, typically strategic plans are, shorter term, 3 to 5 years, it very much is about establishing a trajectory. It very much is establishing, orienting us toward, those priorities. So while we're doing a new strategic plan, it's not that we're going to make a 180-degree, turn or a 90-degree turn and all of a sudden go completely different. We're going to build on that. So that speaks to the issue of vibrant communities. I would put that in that category. And making sure that, one of the things that we heard from, I think it was in Bolton and Hebron and Andover, was this notion of having a gathering place where individuals who, 50, 55, largely still working, but giving thought to what happens in that next 5 to 10 year span. A place that still allows them to be connected and active and engaged, but does provide a central point of gathering and a place of to identify resources. That would just happen to be what those communities in Andover and Marble and Hebron and Bolton were focused on. So part of what we're looking for, if that's an issue and a priority that you're thinking of as we move into those years, is to give thought to what type of amenities, what are the things that would be important to maintaining a quality of life for that demographic that is here and that will be here, so that we're certain to make sure to take that in consideration in our strategic planning. One of the things you can say, well, we're not sure what the ideas are. Well, part of what we perhaps can help do is connect with ideas and approaches that other communities in the region have given thought to, or we are also part of what's called the Council on Foundations, and there's a subcomponent of large community foundations that we meet on and engage on a regular basis. So we're also engaged with our fellow community foundations across the country and sharing ideas and thoughts and approaches that they've used. So that's another way that we can be a resource that says, here's a community with this general demographic profile that is interested in what are some of the things that other similarly situated communities have done to make sure that they're addressing the needs or projected needs of this growing demographic, and being able to bring that information for your consideration. So, thank you for raising it, but it's really about us being able to identify and pinpoint what some of the priorities are, and then figuring out either some of it is about financial support, some of it is about convening, some of it is about bringing thought leadership and other ideas to what other communities have done to ultimately help you all collectively help us, inform those approaches and those opportunities that we might invest in.
If I may just
Sure.
follow up statement along those lines. The changing demographics, the aging of the population, one of the, I think, key things that needs to be kept in mind is, in years past, over the last half century, it wasn't true before then, but, in the last half century, there's been this tendency nationwide to kind of, view seniors as, okay, you kind of split off when you get old enough and, you go off and do your thing and live in your little community,
Right.
your retirement community, and, you get cut off from the rest of society. And in fact, there's more and more evidence to show that, healthy aging, which will keep down the costs of Medicare and, keep more people working and take the pressure off of Social Security. Healthy aging involves multi-generational approaches and connecting older people with younger people. So I think that's a dimension that needs to be kept in mind. And building on what some other people say about, connections with, with Hartford and, just the realities of the socioeconomic demographic differences and the like. The reality is the older generation and the younger generation, there's also not just an age difference, but also, ethnic, socioeconomic, and the like. And I think that kind of an approach would be very helpful for bridging or helping to bridge those gaps as well. So it's a 2-for-1.
Great, and I am a living testament of what you just talked about. So as I said, we relocated here, and that is inclusive of my mother, who I don't think would mind me sharing that she will be 71 in July. And so a 71-year-old mother, 7-year-old son. So you can imagine that makes for all sorts of comedy, at any given point. And though in relocating here, she was with us in Washington D.C. and very active, drives, engaged. Has lots of things that she's involved in. So part of the challenge was, we're moving to another community. She lived in Youngstown the majority of her life. Was with us in D.C. for a few years, but we knew D.C. we weren't going to be there long term. So when we said, Mom, it looks like we're going to be in Hartford. Love to have you come with us. Don't want to make any assumptions. Maybe you want to go back to Youngstown where she's her siblings and we have lots of family. She said, no. Want to be here because one, I'm sure we couldn't imagine trying to convince Ethan that Nana was no longer to be with that. Just none of us wanted to take on that task. So she's happy to be here. And I say all that though, to your point of that healthy aging and that engagement. And she is, for those that choose to live in a retirement community, God bless them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But my mother, as she came and we got settled, got plugged into a program through Leadership Greater Hartford called the Third Age Initiative, which is a program and she's clearly not in the 50 to 55 demographic, but takes opportunities and programs to connect seniors with leadership and project opportunities. And I have, I was in the executive orientation program, mentioned my mother was here. The woman who runs the Third Age said, hey, do you think your mother would be interested? I said, yeah, they talk. A week later, my mother's enrolled. 2 weeks after that, she is coming home, Jay, you gotta, understand, we toured these places, and did you know about all these nonprofits? Did you, and it's funny because it's like, yeah, Mom, I'm kind of, I've been here, and that's my job to know these things, but she's coming, but she is just ecstatic, enthusiastically engaged, and it was always, very independent, gets around. But we were concerned, it's like, how do we plug her in? We don't have family here. It's easy for me to know people. I'm out there every day, and Sonia and Ethan's in school, and Sonia's doing her thing. But to see how in just a matter of, a couple of meetings, she's got, projects, and she's, going a couple of times a week. She was at the point where she drives, but doesn't like to drive at night. All of a sudden now she's like going out to dinner at night with, the friends and her colleagues that she's meeting. And it is that, they're looking for a community project. And part of that, they talked about returning citizens, and they talked about, the challenges that, of mental substance abuse and engaging young people. So you're absolutely right. Here she is at 71, connecting and wanting to contribute to the place that is now her home, and that's only after 8 months. And it's just, the joy that we get from being able to see her excited about connecting and being a resource. So that is absolutely, something that, is indicative of that demographic not going off to, and now don't get me wrong, we'd all like it to be a little warmer here. So, I mean, there's, I don't fault those who want to winter in a warmer climate, but to the extent that is a valuable resource to this community. And finally, just seeing at home the richness of the dialogue between our 7-year-old son and, his 71-year-old Nana, and her taking him and going to different places. And although obviously there's a familiar relationship there, that principle of connecting those generations in ways that bring a richness and an appreciation for the different challenges, socioeconomic and otherwise. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I have to talk about my Fred and this young lady here. He wrote up a good story. I wanted to let you know that just find out how many of you here are working in any way with the foundation for public. How many of you? Just raise your hands, just wonder. Pardon me? I'm paid by the foundation. Well, yes,
that works, right.
But on your own, I'm thinking about those persons who are here. My wife and I have been here for 20 years. We've not seen the growth of other African Americans come into this area. One of the things that my wife will do almost every year is to work with the foundation. Today we returned some things to the foundation because that was the day that was set for us to have worked with students throughout the states or throughout the areas in the state, and with students who are very young, trying to go to college and getting a good money to go to good colleges, and it's wonderful doing that. And I wonder how many of you have worked with that, because that's what I think, or we think, is really needed, to work with the foundation, because it makes it possible for us to sit down, work with families, and be able to send students to schools that they couldn't possibly think of going to. And I would just encourage you to try to become involved that way with the foundation. Now, living here, very different things. I think that there's one African American group in our whole battle where we live. Is that not right? That's about right. So it isn't that kind of thing, but there are many ways of helping other students throughout the areas in our state. And I would love to see you do that, and I'm sure that you would enjoy having that happen to you as well. So I will also ask my wife if she has anything to add to this. She usually does. And they're much better too. They're much better. Is there anything you want to add, Elizabeth?
No, I just want to say that as we're sort of in the education business, that my husband has been for many years volunteering with the Hartford Foundation in the education arena, first as a reviewer for students who apply for scholarships. And the last several years, he has gone out to high schools. Didn't this year have Canton, but he was in Bloomfield this year, Canton last year, to interview students who had applied for scholarships, and to see at the annual program in May where the students are given opportunities given monies to go to college, which they wouldn't be able to afford without the foundation's generosity, is really a very positive thing. So hopefully there will be others who will sign up to volunteer with you, and I'm sure that you can find places for people to help out.
Without question. So thank you both. First, let me tell you, you all didn't see this, but when Dr. Norman started his comments and said, well, every year my wife, I saw her face, like, where is he going with this? But he said, well, every year my wife, and it was like, it was left hanging just for a brief moment. Her face was like, if, I don't know where he's going, but it better land somewhere that I'm okay with. If not, there was going to be a conversation all the way home, or perhaps as he walked and found his way home. So thank you both. And you know, they're referring to our, we have a scholarship program that again is made possible through the generosity of our donors. And there are those donors that just provide resources to our general scholarship pool. And then there are those donors that establish a donor advised fund, a scholarship fund, and establish criteria for graduates, you know, from certain high schools, or graduates who participate in certain extracurricular, or graduates who have, you know, certain interests that they are going to be pursuing, all richly important and to providing that support. And as they talked about, so not only do we do that, but we then have individuals who volunteer to be scholarship readers or interview the students. And this year I had the opportunity to do that, to review a couple of the scholarships, and you can imagine excruciating decisions between ambitious students. Well, first of all, it's sort of, you know, it made me grateful that I have the job that I do, looking at these students and what they had accomplished in, you know, as juniors and seniors, and just being so proud of being able to be a part of that. And again, only made possible because of those individuals who perhaps saw the success in their own lives, what they were able to do for their own children, or aspired to do, and at some point didn't have the opportunity or the resources to do, and now are providing for kids that aren't their kids. And again, these are all our kids, biological or otherwise. These are all of our students. So to the extent that that is of an interest or a passion, we welcome those volunteers who, whether they've established a scholarship or contributor or not, who lend themselves to that reading and interviewing and helping with that process. And it's, you know, we're in the throes of that, as you can imagine right now. We've got some of our staff who run that program, who are very much, you know, in the midst of connecting those students to those resources from all 29 of the community. So thank you both for your long-standing effort in that, and for highlighting that as a part of, you know, what we do as a foundation, and are always eager for those that have that interest or passion around education. Next.
Hi, my name's Steve Morris. I'm with the Arc of the Farmington Valley, more commonly known as FAVAR in this town. We consider ourselves very lucky to be headquartered in Canton. It's a very supportive town. We also consider ourselves very lucky to be in the Hartford Foundation's catchment area, not just for over 30 years of financial support, but the nonprofit support program that was mentioned earlier is fantastic. I don't know of anything else like it anywhere. I think I have the equivalent of a second master's degree for all the courses I've attended over the last decade. The thing that our clients, largely adults with intellectual disabilities, are most interested in are the same thing that we're all interested in. It's just that it's a little harder for them to attain. So a job to earn money, affordable housing, access to healthy food, and a healthy and active lifestyle. Those are the things that we work on. And to reiterate what Susan from Gifts of Love said, I think that collaboration is part of the solution, and we're constantly looking for opportunities to collaborate with our nonprofit partners and our corporate partners from around the region. And the better we can become at that, because we're all facing budget tightening in every way, the more successful and more sustainable we'll be. We believe we need to be around for another 60 years. We're celebrating our 60th this year, because our parents' number one concern is what's going to happen to my kid after we're gone. And so we need to be here for them. And so we depend on our collaborators, our foundations, our town, and everybody else around this room and outside of this room that support us and make what we do possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We got two here. Yep, Beverly, and then
Thank you.
John. Right.
I'm Beverly Schott, and I am a Canton resident. I'm looking at all of the different organizations that you're funding here in Canton, and the same common denominator is speaking to me. They're all about education. So whether it's the Historical Society, the library, of which I'm a member of the board of directors of the Canton Library, the Autism Center, Roaring Brook, and ARC. It's all about education. And I also teach in the city of Hartford under one of your grants at the library. So I'm thinking of when children don't understand where vegetables come from. I had an adult student in his 40s think that blueberries grew on a tree last week. People don't have the awareness if they're not part of agriculture, they don't have access. So I'm thinking of all the things that are available, and I'm going to dovetail on Mr. Campbell's comments about getting people to, understand how people from Hartford can come here and learn, and we can get over that mountain and learn and grow. And there are so many opportunities already available. I'm thinking about the library museum passes, and that towns have them. I see the signs in the Hartford Library. There are all these free museum passes. But how many people are aware that they can do this and think about it? Oh, I can go to the Wadsworth. I live in Canton. I can go there for free. I think awareness building is part of the need because these things are available. I had a student at one of my other jobs in Manchester, a 20-year-old, was going to the Wadsworth for the first time on a field trip. She had never been to a museum before. So these are some educational opportunities that exist that perhaps we could make aware and get some type of campaign going so that people can take advantage of what is theirs anyway.
Good. I appreciate it. Again, so what is the value of resources that are wonderful and of great significance if there's not an awareness that they exist and an understanding of how to access them? Don had a question right here. Right. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm Don Scott from the Canton Historical Museum. And as you can see by the handout here, we're one of the organizations that has benefited from the Hartford Foundation. We certainly appreciate that. I'd like to talk a little bit about education because that's one of the things that we are focusing on going forward. First of all, Collinsville, if you haven't been there, most of us have. It's a very unique place. If you look at late 19th century pictures of Main Street, other than the elm trees, which passed on in the early 20th century, it still looks pretty much the same. We're part of that. All of our business people who run the shops are part of that. Our town government is part of that. Everybody is interested in maintaining that character of the town. It's historical. We feel at the museum, through education, we can spread that appreciation for really a development of a town really from nothing. You made something out of nothing. That's really what they did. And our museum is not accessible easily by all people. Even with our schools, some of them have had to cancel tours at the museum because they can't afford the bus. Right. And I also think I like your idea of establishing some collaboration with schools outside of our local area. If we could help fund bus trips to bring kids out and see what the town is all about. And as you point out, some of those kids have not been out and about. And that would be a great opportunity to do that. We have another issue, and that is we are not handicapped accessible. And getting it handicapped accessible is large dollars. But we thought one option would be really to develop a series of road shows that we could take to schools, maybe where transportation was an issue. I mean, just the logistics were a problem, maybe not the money. And also senior citizens, people that can't get out or we don't have an elevator to our second floor. So if we could take a video show out to those people, that would keep them in touch and keep us in touch with them as well.
Well, thank you. Again, that's exactly why we are here. So what I hope you would do, encourage you to do, is reach out. We'll make sure that the focus of the staff that can have a conversation to begin exploring those things. how can the museum become more accessible? How can it become more shared, the value and the perspective that you all bring to this community? How can it be, again, accessible to those who can get here and for those that can't, to make that happen? So please, we'll make sure that you have contact with the folks who can help start that conversation. And they give me the sign that we have are coming to an end here, and can't thank you all enough for you've had long days, family obligations, work obligations, community obligations, but to come and have a conversation and a dialogue where we can hear from you the priorities, the aspirations, frustrations, the opportunities that exist. That's why we are a community foundation that belongs to those stakeholders. And as I said at the beginning, this information, this discussion will help shape and inform our strategic plan, but also help shape and inform some of our programs and initiatives. And out of this, being able to establish new connections and new relationships, to be able to incentivize collaboration, to speak to the issues of Canton and to Collinsville, and to also speak to the issues of a region. So you will hear from us. Again, this is the beginning of an ongoing conversation. This isn't one and done. We're not checking a box and saying we've got Canton, let's move on. This is taking this down, presenting it back to you, making sure we heard and understood, but then expecting and encouraging ongoing conversations and relationships. So thank you again. We look forward to taking this, and we see as a potential, one of the potential leave behind is, we're excited about the notion and concept around these town funds that would really be an ongoing part of addressing some of these challenges, in addition to the things that we do. So please, there are still some cookies and sandwiches and things left. By all means, please, we can't take them back with us. So enjoy those, and thank you for all that you do in making this a great town and a great region. We certainly appreciate it. Have a good evening.